Hey there, scholarly gamers, and welcome to this week's episode of Jungle Drums. You may or may not have noticed that I have been away for a couple of weeks. There has not been an episode of Jungle Drums in quite some time, and that's because I was quite ill, unfortunately. These things happen. I tend to usually at least once a year get a good proper case of the flu, and this time was no disappointment. I was really quite sick. Basically lived on the couch, didn't really play any games or do anything involving a computer, and so unfortunately I was not up to the task of doing Jungle Drums. But hey, I'm back, let's get cracking on with it. Now, unfortunately, whilst I was sick, obviously I missed Gamescom. And Gamescom had all sorts of great announcements, great reveals. It also would have been great just to pop over to Germany for it, but not this year. Maybe next year. We'll see. We'll see what we can do. But I do want to talk about one thing that was announced at Gamescom, and of course, this is for all the techies out there. This was the GeForce RTX line of cards. Now, the change in name and whatnot was somewhat unexpected. But considering the technology that is coming along with it, it makes absolute sense. These video cards are going to be able to do ray tracing. Now, ray tracing is one of these terms that for a lot of people is completely meaningless. It has to do with the way that light, shadows, and of course reflections are rendered. To put it in perspective, when you think of films like Avatar, or even the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films, which were processed digitally. Avatar's a prime example where the entire film was just completely all done digitally. And when it came time to render those frames, they had entire server farms working on the film, and a single frame could take days, weeks, and whatnot. Hence why it took such a long time to finish those movies. Where it gets interesting is that, the thought of having that technology in a consumer level piece of hardware is something that nobody would have thought about years ago. It's impossible. But these new RTX cards based on the Turing core are going to be able to do that. Now, maybe not to the same fidelity as you'd expect from a Hollywood blockbuster, but still the effects really are quite amazing to see. Now, whether or not these cards are going to perform as promised, it really depends. We need to wait for actual benchmarks to come out, because at the minute it's all speculation, it's conjecture, it's fairly meaningless. People are noticing that from the demos that were shown, when RTX is turned on, when ray tracing's turned on, frame rates take a drastic drop, which makes absolute sense. The way that ray tracing works, we're talking about every possible light source, even ones that are outside of the field of view, are being processed in close to real time. So it shouldn't come as any surprise that your frame rates would take a hit. But, ray tracing, besides the point, people are interested in, well, what about just normal games? What's the performance level going to be like? And that's what we don't know. The pricing has put a lot of people off, with the new RTX 2080 Ti coming in, around $1,200. And I think it's worth to note or understand that, basically the 2080 Ti is replacing the Titan line of cards. Because remember, most home consumers, would get, say a 1080 Ti if they had the money. And then professionals would go for the Quadro, like the Volta series of cards, which, are thousands and thousands of dollars. But in between, you had the Titan cards. And the Titan cards weren't marketed to gamers, but they were the best performing gaming cards. But they cost around $1,200. I remember the special edition Star Wars ones they had that look amazing. Those cards they perform, oh god, how much more percentage? Not too much, but they do outperform a 1080 Ti. But because of the price bracket, they're just way too expensive for your average consumer. where the 2080 Ti is priced, it makes me firmly believe that the Titan line of cards is either going away or maybe is going to be reimagined or, marketed differently, because the 2080 Ti definitely has the same kind of pricing as the old Titan cards. Now, as I said, I don't want to get into it too much because, in my opinion, it's all opinion, it's all speculation until we get actual benchmarks, till we can see for ourselves how these cards perform. Well, guess what? Over at videocards.com, allegedly there is a non-official performance score of an RTX 2080, not a 2080 Ti, but the 2080. And so, if we look at this little graph here, the old Titan XP, which again, that was a $1,200 card, the new 2080 is just under a Titan XP, but a considerable bit higher than a 1080 Ti. And of course, when you look at a 1080 and even an RX Vega 64, substantially higher, quite a bit. Now, of course, these are leaked benchmark scores, so take them with a pinch of salt. But it does look that, we're looking anywhere between, 20 to 30% of a performance increase over the past generation. Now, this is taking into consideration of things like a like-for-like comparison, a DirectX 11 or DirectX 12 game. When you introduce ray tracing into the mix, it changes everything, because previous generations of cards were not optimized for ray tracing. So they could attempt to run a game with it. It's not going to perform very well. Whereas the new Turing, the RTX series of cards are optimized for that. But as with any new technology, because it's the first iteration of it, it's probably not going to be as great as it could be, for later generations. And so we'll just have to see. The cards, excuse me, aren't out for another, couple of weeks. And then once they're released, once the embargoes are lifted, we'll get to see, some of the great tech tubers out there really putting these cards through their paces and giving us some nice, hopefully relatively objective and honest opinions on whether or not to get one or not. It does raise a lot of questions if you are in the market for a video card at the moment. Should you wait for the 20 series? Should you just go ahead and grab a 10 series at a discount? Are the Vegas, affordable now? The prices have gone down, but, whether or not it's worth it, it's hard to say. Of course, it also depends on your monitor technology. FreeSync, G-Sync, we'll just have to wait and see. And then once we do have the benchmarks for those cards, I think it'll help a lot of potential video card buyers out there make a decision. I don't recommend pre-ordering one at the moment because, it's just an unknown quantity. Sure, it'll be cool. It'll be nice to have the newest, shiniest thing. But realistically, it's probably better to wait just a little while. Speaking of waiting, fans of Battlefield are going to have to wait that little bit much longer. Over at PCGamer.com, we've got the headline that Battlefield 5 release date has been delayed to November. The game was originally due to come out on October 19th, but now it's been delayed until November 20th, with EA saying we're going to take the time to continue to make some final adjustments to core gameplay. The delay follows feedback, of course, from the closed alpha, as well as the displays at E3 and Gamescom. The publishers, EA, they do say they've been quite happy, quite pleased by the response to the game, but, there's also been a lot of feedback that's made them want to make some more meaningful improvements to the core gameplay experience, including adjusting the tempo, soldier visibility, and reducing player friction. So they're going to be having another open beta that begins on September 6th, and hopefully you'll witness some of the changes during that. Overall, I haven't played a Battlefield game in ages. It was one of those franchises that, I like to look at, I respect, but never really dove into head first. Now, when you combine this with, of course, we know that Battlefield 5 is getting a Battle Royale mode, But there's a great rumor kicking about on the internet that the Battle Royale mode for Battlefield 5 might be free. That component of the game might be free to download. Now, it is, of course, a rumor, but when you start putting together some of the evidence, the fact that the BR component of the game has been outsourced to a different studio, there's a few kind of telltale signs that this actually could be the case. Whether or not it will be the case remains to be seen, but it would be quite interesting. I mean, when you consider how Fortnite, with its free Battle Royale component, has made, over $1 billion or something. It's done really, really well. I could see why the bean counters, so to speak, at EA would be thinking, actually, if we release a free game or a free component, but with a bunch of, microtransactions or stuff available to buy for it, then, we might be able to make more money than having to, have it bundled with the main game itself. So we'll just have to see. And what was it? Yeah, of course, tying in with the NVIDIA cards, Battlefield 5 is going to have ray tracing enabled. There's some great videos out there showing what it looks like on an RTX 2080 Ti. And it does, it's an amazing effect. But again, you can see the performance hit, that it costs. And it's one of these things that games, it's great when you've got that eye candy. It is fabulous when you have stunning visuals. But at the same time, let's be honest, most PC gamers enjoy a nice, consistent frame rate, especially nowadays when we've got monitors with super high refresh rates, 144 hertz and over. I'm not sure that a lot of people are going to be that impressed, even if it looks amazing, but it's dipping into the 30s or even, lower frames per second. Something else that hasn't really got people impressed that much is the new Xbox One X that has been announced. And that, of course, is the Xbox One X bundle that includes Fallout 76 and a 1TB hard drive that's coming in white. It's going to be coming out on November 14th, in a new white color, so obviously the controller's white. And one of the most disappointing things, let's see, did I have a picture of it? No, they do not. Was they're also releasing a white Elite controller, which, okay, that's great if you like that aesthetic, but most of the Elite controller owners out there, myself included, we were patiently awaiting a second-gen Elite controller, because honestly, the first gens, I mean, my original one, I've turned it in, handed it in for repair once, and then it went tits up yet again. This is controller number 2, which already had the rubber started peeling away, so I had to change that out because I had some spares lying around. It just overall, let's see if I can hear some of the noises. It just, for such an expensive product, it's they're not really built that well. But so anyway, they're releasing another one in white, but it's still the same generation. It doesn't have Bluetooth. The shoulder buttons are probably quite, breakable. And of course, the rubber gripping, the glue they use absolutely sucks. But what was interesting about the Xbox One X, I had a really good conversation, with a friend of mine who appeared on the show before, Jacob, and he was saying how, when you look at a white Xbox One X, how similar it is to an Xbox One S, and how is it possible that Microsoft, used to always that they were kind of using the difference in color to help differentiate between the models. And, it's a good argument. I think that's correct, that yes, if you put them, if you just glance at them, it would be hard to tell them apart. They have a very similar footprint. When you put them side by side, you can see the differences. The Xbox One X, the actual white part of it is less chunky than the One S. Same with the actual disc slot. On the Xbox One X, it's between the white and the black, whereas on the One S, it's actually in the middle of the white. But, if you were just to glance without them sitting side by side, I could see how consumers could maybe mistake them. But of course, when you take into consideration box art, the prices of them are vastly different. I don't think there's going to be that much confusion. And so our conversation was more about the internals. Was that like a really tricky meeting when they were trying to put forward the idea of a white 1X, and this is going to be great, and was another sided argument saying, oh no, people are going to get mixed up. I'm not convinced that there was an internal debate like that. When you look at previous product launches from Microsoft, they've always went white. A white Xbox One X was always going to be a foregone conclusion. It was going to be coming. But still, it's a good, thoughtful conversation. Are these the types of things that happen in the boardroom? Do they consider that? Is it going to be easy to mistake one for the other? But yeah, it's going to be not too bad. One of the other things, of course, that is there a picture of it? No, there isn't. Darn it. Was to match with the robot white color scheme was Turtle Beach's new Elite Pro 2 wireless headset, which is of course going to be in the same white. So yeah, there you go. I mean, some people like that aesthetic, especially if you've got a very kind of minimalist, modern living room, I suppose, and you like that kind of white appeal. Whereas me, I don't know, I always prefer my hardware in black. That's just me, though. But white is definitely getting more and more popular, especially like in PC cases and whatnot. So there you go. Right, now this is something that obviously we saw. It was Scruffy Panda had posted this in the Scholarly Gamers Discord, and I was so glad he did. I mean, I did actually get an email from them not long after, but this was to do with the Humble store. So I've just grabbed this from WCCF Tech, and of course this is to grab Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine on PC for free for a limited time only. Now, they were only doing this for 48 hours. So let's see, that was yesterday, today. So yeah, it'll probably still be around till Saturday unless they run out of keys. But, they were giving away a free copy of Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine to celebrate the start of their Humble Bundle summer sale. If you've never played Space Marine, and there's a good chance you haven't, Warhammer 40k games are really, they appeal to fans of the series. I just recently wrote an article about Warhammer 40,000, so as you can tell, I've always been a fan. But if you've never been into it, it's the games, they might not necessarily have that same draw. You might not really be that interested. But Space Marine is actually a decent game. It's a third-person shooter that also has quite a bit of kind of, melee and hack and slash aspect to it. It's quite old, 7 years old. It was released in 2011. And it was, it was made by Relic and published by THQ. Which obviously now no longer exist. And it was really well received. It's got about a 91% rating on Steam. And that's based off I think just over 5,000 reviews. It was a popular game. I played it on Xbox 360. I used to own it. I'm sure I traded in or something. But it came out on PS3, Xbox 360, and PC back then. But it is pretty cool. The story is, it is linear. It's not like super deep or anything, but it's just one of these games that for free, why the hell not? Just pick it up, give it a try. Because it's several years old, it shouldn't be that demanding on PC hardware. So if you don't have the latest and greatest, I would imagine it'll probably still run okay for you. And it was actually nice for me because, like I said, I played it on the 360. So to play it on PC, the difference in graphics was just as fantastic. It's a really, really good looking game. But again, I'm kind of biased, because I've always been a Warhammer 40,000 fan, including when I was a teenager and a young adult reading novels. If you think of like how Dungeons and Dragons, like things like your Forgotten Realms, all of those series of books, Warhammer 40k had the exact same kind of thing. A whole series of novels following different races, different chapters, and a lot of them are really, really dark, quite gritty. So it's a wonderful universe that I've always been interested in. But whether or not it's going to appeal to you, that remains to be seen. But as I say, for free for this limited time. Why not take a chance, give it a shot, see what you think, and, if you don't like it, then hey, you haven't really lost anything, have you? Now, things that aren't free in this day and age, of course, are new games that are upcoming and all the different versions there that come along with it. Now, I glanced upon this, and this is over from Kotaku, and this is to do with Division 2. And so the headline reads, Ubisoft is walking a tightrope with the Division 2's paid extras. So, right, let's... It just shows how fickle a community can be, because Division 2 has been kind of, it's highly anticipated. It does look amazing. The footage we saw at E3 and at Gamescom is just fabulous. It looks like it's really trying to build upon the successes of the first one, whilst also learning from a lot of the mistakes. And it does. It looks fantastic. And one of the biggest things, that was announced about the Division 2 was that, the expansions for the Division 2 would be free for everyone. When you think of the Division 1, you had to either get that season pass or purchase the, the underground, survival. Oh God, what was the other one? I can't think. You had to buy the DLCs in order to get the full experience. Whereas the Division 2, Ubisoft had promised that is not the case. But the recent announcement that about the different versions of the game have kind of confused people. If I pull them up really quickly, you've got your Standard Edition, you've got your Gold Edition, your Gold Steelbook Edition, okay, your Ultimate Edition, then your Dark Zone Definitive Edition, and your Phoenix Shield Edition, right? So the prices of these range, like if we're talking about, our cash over here, the Standard Edition is about 50 Great British pounds, whereas the Phoenix Shield Collector's Edition is 215. It was funny, I actually didn't know about the Phoenix Shield Edition, and it's probably just as well, because I'd went with the one just under it, the Dark Zone Definitive Edition. But now I'm looking at the Phoenix Shield going, but it's more than twice as much, so I think I'll pass this time around. But yeah, you can pre-order the Division 2 right now, but there's 6 different versions of the game to choose from, depending on how much money you're willing to part with. And, it was after these editions were announced and made available that a lot of fans were spotting some weird things in the fine print. First one, of course, is to do with, the fact that the expansions would be free for all players. And so people were confused that, well, wait a minute, there's a season pass here. If all the DLC is free, if all the expansions are free, why the hell do I need a season pass? And it's quite interesting because there's other Ubisoft games that are doing this as well. And it was only, until you start reading a bit more, you get clarification that, yeah, that's still the case. The DLCs are indeed free, but the season pass is basically paying for early access to them. It's a bit strange. And then when you look also at the 3 most expensive editions, so the Phoenix Shield, the Dark Zone Definitive, and the Ultimate Edition, you get an in-game perk. Players who pay extra for these versions of the game will get an expanded item stash, which will let you store more items than players who buy the lesser, cheaper editions of the game. It's a bit strange, I get it. When you look at, like, Ubisoft's other games, Rainbow Six Siege, that's what happens. You buy a year pass, and you get early access to the operators. You also get those operators instantly unlocked, whereas people who don't pay that money have to wait, and also have to grind them out and purchase them with renown. So I don't see what the huge shock is, because Ubisoft seems to, across the board, be really adopting, a single model. When you look at things like Siege, when you look at For Honor, when you even look at Wildlands to a point, they're really starting to streamline and see that the model that worked for Siege could potentially work for other franchises they have. So the Division 2, it's I get it. Most companies, when they have post release plans, when it comes to DLC and expansions, they're looking at that as a way to make money. You know, Especially when the original Division, all the DLCs you had to pay for. But there's quite, a big opinion, or a big group of people out there who feel that paid expansions somewhat divide the player base. And I've experienced this myself. I know plenty of people who played, games like Destiny or The Division and refused to buy the expansions, or even games like Forza, which, when you think all the different car packs and the, like the Rally expansion, the Porsche expansion, the NASCAR expansion, Forza 6, I know a lot of players that refused to purchase those separately because they felt that it's bullshit. The game was released, but you're telling me it wasn't finished. There's all this extra stuff. So I can understand that opinion. I get that. And we've kind of started to see that drifting away from more and more companies are offering, free post-release content. Monster Hunter World, look at that. Almost all of its extra events and monsters and everything has been absolutely free. Titanfall 2, even so, that game has somewhat died. All of their stuff was free. Battlefront 2, they've pledged to give all post-release content away for free. And so Division 2 is no different. All the stuff's still going to be free. But if you buy the year one pass, because I think that's another thing, a lot of people read it as the season pass, but it's really the year one pass, will give you access to them a week early, which, is pretty cool. If you're willing to pay that money and get access a week early, good on you. On the other hand, if you want to save a few quid, you don't need it. You can just wait like everyone else and play the content when it's actually properly released. Now, I can understand, though, why a lot of people get irritated, because when you consider that the Division 2 is going to, of course, have PvP elements, is it possible that people that have that week of early access, could they get a leg up over those that do not? And by that I mean accessing items, weapons, armor, that is specific to the DLC, and could maybe give them an edge over the other folk? It's a good question. And, according to Ubisoft, say, no, that's not going to be the case. It'll be absolutely fine. But, who knows? Who knows? It's the usual kind of, pre-release speculation and rumors, and, people get edgy and irritated about, the smallest of things. Hopefully the Division 2 does well. I'm really, really looking forward to it. I've kind of strayed away that, Destiny 2 has its new expansion coming out, and it's going to be the first time in the Destiny franchise that I haven't already pre-ordered an expansion for it. It's an enjoyable game, but it's somewhat dead to me. I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait, see how it turns out, see what my friends say, and then maybe I'll get the expansion. Whereas the Division 2, on the other hand, is a franchise that I absolutely love. I still play the original Division, and went ahead and pre-ordered a physical copy of the Division 2. But yeah, we'll just have to see how this works out and see if more games tend to follow this model of, yes, our DLC's free, but pay and you can get early access. Again, it shouldn't come as a shock for an Ubisoft game, because they do it in so many of their other franchises: Wildlands, Siege, For Honor, etc. Probably even the next Assassin's Creed. We'll just have to wait and see. But you know what? That is going to do it for this week. As always, thanks for watching. Make sure to read all our other content on the website. We've had a relatively light week this week. But hopefully, things will pick up. It's the end of summer. Folk are going back to school. It's your typical lull. We come to expect this. But there should be some great content coming your way soon. As always, over the weekend, use the hashtag ScholarlyGamers to see, if you can find folks streaming. There's usually at least a couple of folk online at any given time. and, show your support. Same on Twitter. Look for the hashtag ScholarlyGamers. Join a conversation. Go to our subreddit where all of our articles are posted if you want to have a chat about what someone has written about. But anyway, that's going to do it for me. You can hear my voice is already starting to crackle a little bit. I'm feeling better, but obviously not as good as I could be. But hey, that's going to do it for this week. Hopefully we'll be back to normal programming next week with my friends and or guests. Again, I had to fly solo this week just because kind of last minute. But hey, have a good one. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.